Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping straight into a really significant development in AI policy.
That's right. California's passed Senate Bill 10047.
The big AI safety bill. It's gone through the Assembly and the Senate.
Yeah, it's officially passed both. And the key thing here, as you said, is that while it's a California bill, its reach is much broader.
It affects any company that operates in the state, basically.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is, well, to unpack this. What does the bill actually require?
Right, what's in it?
Why is it causing such a stir in the tech world? And what are the ripple effects?
For businesses, for AI development itself?
Yeah, all of that. We want to give you a clear picture, drawing on some analysis from the AI show, a Wall Street Journal piece, and some insights from Arise AI.
Okay, sounds good. So let's get right to it. SB 1047, what's the core requirement? What are companies facing?
Well, the headline is that AI companies need to put specific safety measures in place before they train these really advanced foundation models.
Before training even starts.
Before training. We're talking about those powerful general purpose AIs that are, at the cutting edge right now.
Okay. And what kind of safety measures are we talking about? What they actually have to do?
The bill lists a few key things. First, they need to show they can quickly shut down a model if something goes wrong. A safety breach.
A safety breach? Like what constitutes a breach?
Good question. It likely means things like the model spitting out harmful stuff consistently, or, behaving in ways that are unpredictable and potentially dangerous.
Okay, so a kill switch, basically.
Sort of, yeah. A demonstrable kill switch capability. Second, they need strong protections against someone tweaking the model after training to make it unsafe.
Preventing unauthorized modifications.
Exactly, like bypassing the built-in safety rules. And third, and this is crucial, they need ongoing testing procedures.
Testing for what specifically?
For potential critical harm risks. They need to constantly evaluate if these advanced models could cause serious problems.
Okay, on the face of it, that sounds, pretty reasonable, doesn't it? Shutting down dangers, preventing tampering, testing.
You'd think so, but it's actually generated a lot of debate. It's quite controversial.
Really? Who's on which side?
Well, you've got big players like OpenAI mostly against it.
Okay.
But then Anthropic seems largely supportive, although they did push for some changes.
Interesting split. So what are the main criticisms? Why are companies like OpenAI pushing back?
Several key points. One big one is the focus. Critics say the bill is maybe too focused on, catastrophic end-of-the-world type harm.
The Skynet scenarios.
Kind of, yeah. And the worry is that focusing so much on that might distract from more immediate, maybe more likely risks, or even just the practical challenges.
So maybe the risk focus is too narrow or too sci-fi?
That's one argument. Another major concern is innovation. The fear is these rules could slow everything down.
How so?
By adding costs, creating hurdles, especially for smaller players or open source projects, making it harder to just build and experiment quickly.
Right. The move fast and break things philosophy kind of hits a wall.
Exactly. And there's also the worry that any rules made now might just be outdated really fast, given how quickly AI is changing.
That's a fair point. Now, you mentioned Anthropic pushed for changes and the bill was amended, right?
Yes, it was. Some significant changes were made.
Like what? Did they address these concerns?
Well, for instance, the threat of criminal penalties, that's gone. It's civil penalties now.
Okay, that's a big change.
Definitely. And some of the enforcement powers were apparently narrowed down a bit, partly based on Anthropic's suggestions.
But did that satisfy the critics, OpenAI and others?
Not entirely, it seems. Many still feel the fundamental issues, the potential drag on innovation, the focus on catastrophic risk, haven't really been resolved by these amendments.
Okay, so we have this major bill passed in California. Why does this matter so much outside of the state or outside the core AI industry?
Because California's economy is just massive. It's like, the fifth largest in the world?
Something like that, yeah. It's huge.
So this bill hits any company doing business in California. That means companies all over the U.S., even internationally, if they have Californian customers or operations.
So the reach is potentially global.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
If you're offering an AI-powered service to people in California, you might need to pay attention to SB 1047.
Got it. And I think you mentioned something about Fortune 500 companies already getting worried about AI regulation in general.
Absolutely. That Wall Street Journal piece highlighted it's something like 27% of Fortune 500 companies mentioned AI regulation as a risk in their recent SEC filings.
Wow, over a quarter. That's significant.
It really is. It shows this isn't just a niche tech concern anymore.
So what are these big companies specifically worried about when they talk about AI regulation risk?
The Ariza AI analysis dug into that. They found 137 of the Fortune 500 mentioned it. Their concerns are pretty varied.
That has.
Things like the direct cost of compliance, having to implement new processes, potential fines if they mess up.
Okay, the financial side.
Right. But also broader impacts, like will this slow down revenue growth because they can't deploy AI as quickly?
Makes sense.
And just the fear that their current AI systems might accidentally fall foul of new rules they didn't anticipate.
It sounds like a lot of uncertainty for them.
Exactly. That's the key word, uncertainty. Ariza AI quoted Visa on this, basically saying the big problem is not knowing how regulation will actually look and the lack of a single global standard.
So everyone's guessing what might come next.
Pretty much. You've got different states, different countries, all potentially doing different things. It's a complex patchwork.
And are companies doing anything to prepare for this uncertainty?
Some are, yeah. We're seeing more companies setting up their own internal AI guidelines, ethical frameworks, that sort of thing.
Trying to get ahead of the curve.
Trying to get ahead, or at least establish some responsible practices internally.
Yeah.
But it's tough when, apparently, there are literally hundreds of AI-related bills floating around in different U.S. states right now.
Hundreds. Okay, that's a lot to track. So, with all this regulatory attention, SB 1047 being a prime example, what does this mean for the speed of AI development? Is it going to slow down?
The general consensus seems to be, yes.
Yeah.
Probably longer development cycles for the really big, powerful frontier models.
And that's likely even without SB 1047.
It seems like a broader trend,
Yeah.
Even aside from specific laws like this one.
Why? What's driving that slowdown?
It's a combination of factors. AI labs are working more closely with governments now, even voluntarily. Think about the U.S. AI Safety Institute.
Right, more collaboration, more oversight.
Exactly. They're opening up their models more, demonstrating safety features. Remember OpenAI showing off that strawberry generation thing to officials?
Oh yeah, the video generation.
That kind of validation takes time. It adds steps to the process before a model gets a wide release.
So more checks and balances, basically.
Precisely. So instead of seeing, say, a jump from GPT-5 to GPT-6 every 8 or 12 months.
Which has felt like the pace recently.
Right. That might stretch out to maybe 18 or 24 months between those huge leaps.
That's a pretty noticeable change. So how will we see that impact as users? Will new features just stop appearing?
Probably not stop, but the way they appear might change. We'll likely see more iterative rollouts. Meaning companies like Google, OpenAI, Anthropic will probably keep adding new capabilities, better video, more realistic voices, things like that, but maybe in smaller, more frequent updates rather than one massive new model release.
So steady improvements rather than giant leaps.
That seems likely. It lets them continuously show regulators, look, we're improving things safely, incrementally.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, we talked about the controversy. There are different fundamental views on how to regulate AI, aren't there?
Oh, definitely. A major counter-argument to the SB 1047 approach, regulating the model itself, is that we should be regulating the application.
Regulate the use, not the tool itself.
Exactly. The analogy sometimes used is engines. Do you regulate the invention of a more powerful engine, or do you regulate how it's used, speed limits for cars? Rules against using engines and bombs.
I see. So apply that to AI.
But the argument is, AI is a general-purpose tool. Regulate its use in specific areas, healthcare, finance, weapons, rather than trying to regulate the underlying AI model, which could be used for countless things, good and bad.
And the fear is that regulating the model itself could stifle the good uses.
That's the core concern, yeah. That this kind of early-stage model regulation could slow down beneficial innovation, things that could drive economic growth or solve big problems, because we're too worried about potential future harms.
It's like trying to regulate the internet back in, 1994?
That's the comparison people often make. We didn't really know what the internet would become back then. Do we really know the full potential of AI now? Regulating too early, too heavily, at the foundational level, it could have unintended consequences.
It's a tough balance, isn't it? Safety versus progress?
It's incredibly difficult. You absolutely need to consider the risks, especially with powerful AI. Responsible development is key. But you also don't want to kill the golden goose. Finding that sweet spot where you ensure safety without crippling innovation, that's the billion-dollar question right now.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what are the main things you think our listeners should take away from this deep dive on SB 1047?
I think first, SB 1047 is a really big step, a concrete move towards AI regulation in the U.S., focusing on safety before training advanced models.
A significant marker.
Definitely. Second, it creates a lot of uncertainty for businesses, way beyond just California, and it's likely part of a trend that will affect the pace of AI development. Expect longer cycles, more incremental rollouts.
Okay, uncertainty and a potential change in pace.
Yeah. And third, it highlights this fundamental tension.
The balancing act we just talked about.
Exactly. Balancing safety and ethics with the drive for innovation and progress. That's the core challenge everyone's wrestling with.
Right. So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to ponder. AI is moving incredibly fast. Its potential impact is huge on jobs, society, everything.
It really is complex.
So regardless of what specific rules like SB 1047 end up looking like or how effective they are, how do we as individuals, as societies, actually prepare? How do you prepare for a future where AI is just much more deeply integrated into everything? What questions should you be asking yourself as this all unfolds?
Good questions to keep in mind.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.